Good morning, good afternoon, home design professionals. My name is Risa Eldon. I'm here on behalf of Ivy. And we also have Enoch Sears, the Business of Architecture's founder, here with us today. And thank you so much for joining us, Enoch. We really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, Risa. So glad to be here with you and your amazing audience.
Great. So I'm going to get started and tell you a little bit because I know you're dying to get more profitable, as somebody already commented. And we are really excited to understand the profitability roadmap that Enoch has put together. A little bit of background about Enoch Sears. He is a highly sought after design firm business expert. After years working as a successful architect, so he's been in your shoes, he understands the pain points that you go through. He left the profession to focus on helping architects and designers build profitable and impactful practices. The Business of Architecture is the leading provider of business training and tools for small architecture firm success. He is the author of the book, Social Media for Architects, and host of the #1 rated interview podcast for architects, The Business of Architecture Show, where leading architects and home design professionals share strategies for success. The Business of Architecture podcast has more than 1 million downloads, and definitely super grateful for you. I know you're a busy guy to be spending your morning sharing all of your tips and tricks with us today. So without further ado, I'll let you take over, Enoch.
Great, Risa. Really appreciate that. And I'd love to know, those of you who are listening today, who on here is actually already subscribed to the podcast. I'd just like to know who here is familiar with the podcast, who already listens to it. Love to hear that. And then I'd also like to just say that although I come from the field of architecture, home design in general is so closely integrated with what we do as architects. And what I found is that whether you're an interior designer or another home design professional, that what we're going to be going over today is going to be super relevant for you. And a lot of times, it seems like in the design industry, there's a little bit of tension there between the home design professionals, home designers, interior designers, and the architects. Well, the truth of the matter is that when you say architect, there's a broad spectrum of things that architects do, everything from high rises to people who just do remodels. And so, as you know, it's a professional license, a professional certification. But the other thing I'd have you know, and I always tell this to my audience when I'm dealing with predominantly home design professionals, interior designers, is architects are starving to make connections with you. So currently, if you feel like there's some architects in your market, you'd like to get to know them, I encourage you to reach out because we're always looking for fantastic new designers to meet and to make relationships with. All right. So having said that, let's jump into today. And I also work with interior design professionals, and we'll be talking a little bit about that as well. So here's what we're going to cover today in our agenda, right? How to leverage attraction-based marketing to actually create demand for your services. Now, in the home design profession, a lot of times, of course, you're depending on referrals. And that is fantastic. That is the gold seal that says that you're doing a great job. But a lot of times you may feel trapped in that place because you feel like maybe there's different kind or different level of projects you want to do, or maybe those referrals aren't just coming fast enough. We're going to talk about how to overcome that obstacle. In addition, you'll also discover how to map out a sales process to turn any prospective leads that you have into actual clients. We're going to talk about how to deliver your services and scale efficiently, and then also talk about how to measure the results of your marketing and your sales effort. So let's jump right into it. We're going to go into what I call the profitability roadmap. Now, a lot of this is going to be very, very big picture, but at the same time, we're really going to drill down into the details. And I encourage you and I welcome any questions that you have along the way, because really, when we think about this game of business, we can really break this down into this framework that we're going to be going over here. All right. So I pulled this up on the screen. Risa, I just want to check in with you and make sure that you can see my screen before I continue on. So far, technology is helping us.
Yes, we're good to go. And we definitely got some answers to your questions. A couple members already subscribed to your podcast, so that's exciting. And if anybody has any issues, go ahead and tech issues, you can ask in the comments, or you can comment in the comment section. And then if you have any questions, please use the ask a question button to the left, and I'll make sure to get to all of your questions.
Thank you, Risa. So let's first of all start off on why you need a bulletproof business. Now, this may seem like common sense, right? Who wouldn't want a bulletproof business? But let's make sure that we cover our bases first. Now, here's the deal, right? More established practices will steal your lunch money. And it's not because they're out to crush the small practitioner. It's just because they're in the business of helping their clients. And make no mistake, the designers in your market, the home design professionals right now who are running excellent businesses, who have high profit margins, who are absolutely crushing it, they have systems in place, these things we're going to be talking about today, and they're able to deliver exceptional results to your clients. So ultimately, what we want to do is we want to be able to make sure that your back office, your operation, so to speak, your enterprise is set up in such a way that you can focus on what you do best, which is hopefully delivering exceptional results to happy clients, raving fans. And in the old house that I used to live, tell you a quick story about this, right? So in the old house that I used to live, it was in a neighborhood where we just had a thoroughfare of kind of shady characters that would come by, right? It was like on a path where, the homeless people would drive by, they come and looking through the trash in the morning. And, we're always, my car got broken into a couple times. And so I was talking to a police officer friend of mine about the best way to prevent a break-in or prevent theft. And he told me, look, the best strategy is not necessarily getting the best security system or anything like that. It's actually making your home look less desirable than the home next door. So he calls this strategy hardening, right? Is that if your home looks more difficult to attack or to break into or to steal from, then the thieves will go to the next house. Now, how does this relate to business? The same thing applies, right? That as you harden your business, this is what allows you to create a bulletproof business, because ultimately, when the next recession hits, when business goes down, the businesses that are the healthiest, the most hardened, are going to be the ones that succeed. So let's have a look here at the reasons why home design professionals struggle. In general, it's because when you look at home design professionals, you have two camps. You have the entrepreneurs and you have the artists. Most home design professionals are artists. Fortunately, a lot of them have a little bit of both, but ultimately what ends up happening is that you focus so much on your art is that you're missing the key knowledge and strategy about how to apply that design thinking that you already have to your business. So here's the key. You already have everything you need to run a wildly successful design business. Ultimately, perhaps just someone's never showed you how to apply those design thinking skills to the actual construction of your business, right? And so they didn't teach this in school. There's no school you can go to get an MBA on running a design firm. That just doesn't exist. And so ultimately what happens is people end up figuring it out on their own or going to mentors and advisors to shortcut the process. Now, I want to go over quickly 2 obstacles to creating your ideal business. And these is a critical distinction that I see when I work with design firm owners. First of all, let's say there's 2 camps of entrepreneur designers. The first camp is the opportunistic thinkers. The second camp are the strategic thinkers. So when we look at what it means to be opportunistic, this means that you're constantly chasing opportunity. Instead of being able to create a plan, follow that plan, map out exactly where you want to get to, and then use those steps and hit those milestones to get there, opportunistic thinkers are caught in the trap, so to speak, of waiting for things to happen in their business and being in a reactive mode instead of a active mode, right? Opportunistic thinkers look for the short-term easy way instead of building long-term assets. There's this idea of the marshmallow experiment, which I think was done back at Stanford. And in this particular experiment, they were testing the willpower of these young children. So what they would do is they would put a marshmallow in front of the young child. They would walk into another room. Before they did that, though, they would tell the child, look, if you can wait 5 minutes, a certain period of time, and I come back in the room and you haven't eaten the marshmallow, then I'll give you 2 marshmallows, right? So you'll get more if you wait. Well, ultimately what they found is that some of the kids were just, they're staring at that marshmallow. They just couldn't resist themselves and they gobbled it up as soon as the person left the room. Others, though, were able to actually do things like look in another direction, tap their fingers, look away, and they were able to hold on and wait to get those 2 marshmallows. So the opportunistic thinkers, of course, were the ones that saw the marshmallow, they ate it, they went for the short-term win. And when they measured out the business and life and just general success of these 2 groups of people over time, they found out that there was a dramatic correlation between those people who were more fulfilled, more successful in life, more successful in business, those people who as children waited for the marshmallow. Opportunistic thinkers lose out in the long run. They try to copy competitors by doing it just a little bit better. And again, how to know if you're being opportunistic? Well, do you have a strategic goal? Are you following it? Or are you just reacting to things that are happening on a day-to-day basis? The good news is that you can truly be a strategic thinker, and we're going to go over that today. Here's the keys to being strategic. Having a clear vision, having a clear sense of purpose, understanding what is your why. Why is it that you're doing what you're doing? It needs to be something greater than just making money. You'll need to develop a business plan that plays to your strengths and your competitor's weakness. You need to be willing to say no to the wrong opportunities. Now, this is one critical key that I see behind designers who are able to really grow exceptional practices and do exceptional work, and others that constantly feel like they're not doing their best work because they're getting those kind of projects. It's very difficult to turn away what may be the wrong opportunity or opportunities that don't fit the budget, don't fit the lifestyle, don't fit the clients that you may want to work with. Architect Glenn Murcutt is based out of Australia. He won the Pritzker Prize. Very interesting guy, but he takes us to a whole new level. He says the projects you take today inform the kinds of clients you'll have tomorrow. So you're defined by what you say no, and in the long term, it will pay off. However, in the short term, we still want to get you some wins because we know that you need to eat, you need to be able to bring in business and keep the business alive. So that's why we're going to talk about the 4-part architecture firm profit map. Now, when we look at this, I'm going to be talking about 4 distinct systems in your business to arrange this logically in a sequence. Number 1, a system to create demand for your services. This is generally what we call marketing. Number 2, a system to turn that demand into projects. This is generally called sales, and those two things combined to overlap with business development. Number 3, a system to deliver your product, your services, and to scale. And number 4, a system for improvement and accountability, not only internally with yourself, but any of your consultants, your team members, and your staff. So let's jump into the first system, shall we? A system to create demand for your services. Ultimately, what we want to do here from a strategic framework is we want to set you up so that you are the hunted and not the hunter. So you're not the one who's needy trying to find projects, but actually projects are coming to you and you get to pick and choose the projects you work on. For this, what I found best is to use what's called attraction-based marketing. Now, there's a lot of ways that attraction-based marketing can be deployed. Let's have a look at what this is. Before I jump into that, I'm going to tell a quick story that was told in a very best-selling book back in the last century, actually. In the 1960s, I think this book came out by Frank Beccia. And he was a sales personality. He was a sales trainer. And he told a story about how early in his career, he was selling insurance. And as he was going and knocking on doors and meeting with business owners and families, he found that he has a very low win rate. It was frustrating for him. He felt like he wasn't getting the wins that he needed to because of the time he was investing in his profession. And so, discouraged one day, he was sitting down on the dock down at the bay, and he was looking at these large ships. Now, these large ships were tied to the quay, or the bollards, these gigantic poles, right, with these very large ropes called hawsers. And as he sat there looking at these gigantic ropes that are bigger than a person's thigh, he was wondering how they got that gigantic rope from the deck of the ship down to the longshoreman who would then tie up the boat. And as he was wondering this, he saw a ship come into shore, so he was actually able to watch. And what he saw a sailor on the boat who had a small little rope, a small cord that was tied to what looked like a large knot. And this knot is known as a monkey's fist. So a monkey's fist is a circular knot. It basically looks like a sphere when it's tied. Sailors use this to be able to, they use that as a heaving line, meaning they use it to be able to get a larger rope to a distant location. They use it to be able to throw a rope. Right? If you've ever tried to throw a rope, it's sort of like throwing spaghetti. And so as Frank watched, he saw the sailor swinging this small lasso with the monkey's fist on the end around his head, tossed it down to the longshoreman who was waiting below. The longshoreman grabbed the monkey's fist, grabbed the cord that was then attached to the large hawser, pulled that up, and was able to tie up the ship. So what Frank realized in this moment, he had a little aha, and he realized that he was asking for too big of a commitment on the first sale, right? So he realized there was actually 2 sales that he needed to make in this process of creating demand for his services. The first one was to actually get a meeting, and the second one was to then make the sale. Now, a lot of times, even sales professionals, but anyone, architects, home design professionals, a lot of times they conflate the two, and they look at trying to make the sale when really what they should be doing is trying to get the meeting, right? And so when we apply this principle of the monkey's fist to the idea of attraction-based marketing, we enter the conversation of content marketing, which I know many of you are very familiar with. Right? This is the idea and the concept of creating some sort of valuable material, some sort of valuable resource that attracts your ideal clients, Now, this can be something that's downloadable on your website. It can be something that you share with people by having them reach out to you and call you. But this is how we apply this idea of attraction-based marketing. So let me give you a quick example. Let's say that you are, once again, you're a home design professional and you want to attract high-end clients with healthy budgets that want to have a full-on interior remodel happen, and including the decorating, the furnishing, everything like that, right? So you might develop a small guide called 9 Mistakes to Avoid When Furnishing Your Multi-million-dollar Home. Or you could say 9 mistakes to avoid when hiring a home design professional. Okay. So this would be a little guide. Now, what you're doing with this guide, of course, is you're getting interest, and you probably are familiar with this concept, but ultimately here's the key, and here's what happens. There's this idea of the client demand pyramid. And the client demand pyramid says that in your market, let's say that just imagine every single person you could potentially work with is represented by a large triangle. Well, at the top of that triangle, you have people who are ready to buy right now. Those people generally are about 3% of your market. Right below that, you have people who they're not ready to purchase. They're not ready to actually move ahead. They're looking for specific advice. They're looking for diagnostic advice. That's generally going to be about 6% of your market. And then below that, you have 91% of your market who may do a project anytime from 2 months to 3 years to 5 years down the road. And they're in the information gathering stage. And this is where having a systematic way to do content or to do attraction-based marketing can be so powerful for your practice. So this isn't something that you do to replace business development. It's something you do with it in tandem to build out a fully functioning marketing system for your practice, right? And so here's the steps we want to go through when we do this. First of all, you want to identify, number one, who your ideal clients are, of course. You want to find out, where do I find my ideal clients? Now, my guess is for you, I don't know what kind of work you do. If you want to drop it into the question box, I'd love to know specifically what kind of products you work on. But my guess is that builders, architects, other interior designers are going to be your best referral sources, potentially real estate agents, but primarily looking at who are the people who are upstream from you that could end up referring you that work, right? So contractors, builders, architects obviously work with home design professionals. So these are the potential partners and ideal clients that you want to have that will then introduce you to your ideal clients. All right. So what we do ultimately is you want to make sure you do your research on who your ideal client is. You want to understand very clearly their frustrations, their fears, their dreams, and their desires. You need to be able to articulate the problem that they're facing better than they can articulate it themselves, right? And what you'll find, if you've been in this business a while, is that ultimately people, specifically homeowners, of course, budget's important to them, timeline's important to them, but at the core of it, there's something more important and more driving that's actually driving that project to happen. Right? It may be because they're going through a life transition. Let me give you a quick example that my friend Ryan Willard tells me. So he's an architect based out of the UK. He runs the Business of Architecture UK podcast. And Ryan was meeting with a client, and she was leaning towards going with another architecture firm. Ryan's an architect. And as he was talking with her, he began to sense that something wasn't resonating, and she was unsure about using his services, right? She had a lot of other options. He definitely wasn't the cheapest option. But by questioning and by really listening to what she was saying, he was able to discover that the reason she wanted to do the project was because she had just married her husband 3 or 4 years previously, and she was living in the house that was decorated by the ex-wife. Okay, so ultimately what she shared is, I want a space that I can call my own because currently I'm living in a house and I feel like I'm living in the shoes of my husband's ex-wife. Well, this is a little tidbit that Ryan was able to uncover that no one else was. And when he then addressed that, when he then used that as he's talking about what he's going to do, he's going to say, yep, we really want to make sure that we're representing your goals, your aspirations, your dream, and your vision, and leaving behind anything that may relate to your ex-wife, to your husband's ex-wife, right? And as he sort of worked this conversation into what they were talking about in the dialogue, who do you think won the project, right? So when we talk about articulating the problem, we want to go past the surface level. We want to make sure we're not having a conversation about budget, time, colors, things like that, right? We want to get deeper down into the emotion. Attraction-based marketing, right? When we think about that, we think about thought leadership. So these would be things like speaking to groups, publishing articles, doing a podcast, which is a fun, fantastic, cutting edge way to be able to get your message out there. I know there's a lot of interior designers in the podcast space that you can look to, probably podcasts you listen to, and it's easier than you think to get it out there. Even if no one listens to the podcast but you and your mother, it's going to be a valuable resource because you can share this with potential clients, share it with potential referral partners to be able to get your name in front of them. And a podcast can be something as simple as picking up your phone and just hitting the voice memo application and just speaking into it, right? You can find on outsourcing websites like Upwork, so it's UPWORK, Upwork.com. You can find people who will be able to process that podcast for you. Very, very reasonable rates to help your marketing system work, right? Thought leadership, webinars, video, YouTube is huge right now. 2019, 2020, 2021 are going to be the year of videos, right? This is a big play to make as you're building out your marketing for your firm, your practice. Business development, of course, what we want to look for there is we want to look for warm introductions, right? We want to figure out who are we connected to? Can we get introduced to that person? Can we take them out to lunch? Leveraging LinkedIn is a fantastic tool for being able to do this. Attending live events with people in your network is great. And then, of course, there's all the other social media platforms. Some people like Instagram, some people like Snapchat, some people like Twitter. What I would encourage is that you stick with one. My recommendation right now is that Facebook is huge and Instagram is also huge, probably specifically for your target market. They're very well suited. And I'm sure most of you are probably on Instagram and using it. They're very well suited to the visual media. And there's a lot you can do there. You can have Instagram stories, you can have videos, you can have Instagram TV. I mean, there's really a lot of fun that you can have with Instagram, just showing the behind the scenes of your business, helping people to know, like, and trust you, because this is really what it's about. All right. When we talk about attraction-based marketing, what's so important, though, is it's one thing to be on social media. It's one thing to be able to have some cool downloadable lead magnet or some monkey's fist guide, but it's another thing to have your problem, your promise, your proof, and your offer align with what your market really wants, right? So number one, first step is to identify a problem in the market. Number two, and when I say problem, sure, being able to have the right home space, that is a problem, but can we go deeper than that? Can we look at something? Maybe we want to focus on people who are making life transitions, right? Maybe we're looking at people who are working with second homes. Of course, when we talk about our promise, this is what we're going to deliver. Proof would be case studies and testimonials. And then, of course, the offer is what they're going to give us for what we're going to give them, how we're going to basically help them, okay? So if you want a more in-depth training on the marketing aspect of your business, on how to become the hunted and not the hunter, you can go to architectwebinar.com. And I use the word architect a lot because that's who I work with, but guaranteed this works for unlicensed designers, interior designers who are licensed, home design professionals, you name it. All right. So I want to pause for a minute here. I just want to know, what are you hearing from what I've gone over so far? Maybe some of this content, you've already been exposed to it. Maybe some of it's new. But I'd like to know specifically, what is the message you're getting? What is the insight that you're getting? If you would drop that into the questions to staff box, the chat box right there, be able to help me get some feedback on what you're personally hearing from what we went over right now. Are any actions coming to your mind, things that you need to do, any opportunities that you may be ignoring right now in your market? Let's hear about that. And then any questions you have, I'll pause here for 20 or 30 seconds to let Risa look at that and see if there's anything that we want to address before we move on.
I think there was one question about explaining the Glenn M. quote a little bit further. And that was kind of in the beginning of your presentation, Enoch.
Sure. So Glenn Murcutt, right? He talked about this quote. He said, the projects you take on today inform the projects that you will get tomorrow, right? This is key to being a strategic thinker. So the idea here is that whatever project you take on today, sure, what's going to happen over time, you may grow the size, the complexity, the budgets of the projects you work on. But ultimately, a lot of times what happens with the business is this: you bring on a project from a particular client type who's in a particular income level, who's in a particular demographic, who has a particular budget. Well, you do a fantastic job. Let's hope everything turned out great. Well, what happens is that this person now that you did the project for is going to sing your praises to their network. And guess what? Birds of a feather flock together, right? Birds of a feather flock together. So simply, the principle here is that they're going to refer more people like them to you. And if you want to be able to get different kinds of projects, this is going to be an obstacle right? So ultimately, it's going to be very difficult in the future because you're going to have all these kind of projects coming in, maybe that aren't the size that you want, and you're going to be taking them. Well, this is going to push out the opportunity to get larger and bigger and better projects, whatever that happens to mean for you in the future. And so Glenn, what he's expressing with that quote, of course, is that he's very selective about the projects that he takes on, because the kind of projects he does today will inform or will influence the kind of projects he's going to do in the future. All right. So let's do this here. I'll make sure that I can blow up my screen as well to make it bigger. So even if you're on kind of a shaky connection or maybe have a little bit of blur, because what will happen is the software will automatically kind of downsize the bandwidth of our connection here if you're having internet difficulty. So I'll make this bigger, and hopefully that should solve some of the issues with that.
Great. And then there's a couple more questions. You want to reach
yeah,
them?
please.
Okay. Great. So a couple comments first. Can you share your expanded slide with us when you're done? There's a lot of information. It's hard to take notes, but it's really amazing information. So I don't know if we can share or how we can get that, but I do know, everybody, that there will be a recording of this webinar shared with you post-webinar.
Yeah, good to go. And if it's okay with you, Risa, what I'll do is I'll set up a special link where people can go and I can send them the PDF of this blown up, and they can just print it out and have it and take notes on it.
Perfect. That is super helpful. And then another comment is, I can see all of his talk. I'm hearing that I need to create videos and podcast content. I realize this, but it's great to hear again. And then another one regarding business development. This is a great one. I had an impromptu conversation with a residential mortgage banker yesterday, which led to a potentially huge opportunity for referrals. I hadn't considered that approach before. Awesome. And then one question here, is the best way to get in touch with builders and architects just emailing them, or is there any other great way to get in with architects?
Oh, great question. I love that question, right? Because you're thinking, how can I get in with them? With architects, what I would say is, like, understand the kind of designs that they do and make sure that the design services you offer integrate with what they have. Okay, that's number one. That's something just to be aware of when we're thinking about that. In terms of how to get a hold of them, go to live events. A lot of architects go to AIA events. A lot of times they're more than welcome to go. You know, you could even schedule a speaking gig at a local AI event. Now, I know a lot of times home design professionals, because maybe you didn't study this in school, maybe it's a career that you've created for yourself. A lot of times there's an intimidation factor of being like, well, architects are these kind of licensed professionals. They've been doing this for years and years and years. And who am I to teach them? Or maybe they'll look down on me, right? This is a figment usually of your imagination, right? And so what I would say is architects are very open to getting value from you and the skill sets that you have, right? So for instance, I know the AI has residential architecture groups. And so it would simply be a matter of finding a topic that they'd be interested in speaking on it. So that'd be one approach, is preparing something maybe on the latest trends in furniture, furnishings, interior items, and things like that. The second thing is, you know what, just call them up and just ask them if you can drop by the office. As architects, we're always looking for new people to expand our network. You know, to be honest, a lot of architects we're introverted. And so we like people coming to us, and most architects be happy to give you 10 to 15, 20 minutes of their time just for you to sit down with them, figure out what kind of work they do, figure out if there's any potentials there for opportunity to collaborate. And so I would just say, connect with them on LinkedIn, see if there's any warm introductions, can anyone introduce you to them? And if all that fails, just call them up, just give them a cold call, and they'll be happy. Because look, we get called all the time by manufacturers, suppliers, people who are wanting to tell us about their products. And a lot of times we're very open to that because we're always looking for ways to deliver better value to our clients. So hopefully that helps.
Great. And then to tag on to that, an interesting question, but aren't we as interior designers sometimes competing with architects who do interiors? Yeah, sure. Sometimes you are, right? So, you know, it depends. Like a lot of times architects will have, you know, first of all, I know a lot of architects, they don't really do interior design. And the scope of your work may be very different from what they offer. One thing that I love about the interior design business model is that hopefully you're involved in the purchasing and the supplying of the furnishings of the home. Like this is a domain that architects usually do not get into unless they're very high-end firms. And in that case, they probably do use interior designers. And so what I would say is that from an architect's perspective, there's a lot of value you can offer an architect who does residential architect in terms of a value add. And you may need to look,
Do you need help doing the furnishing plans? Do you need help doing the interior specifications? Like, this is something that I can do. Architects, a lot of time, it may not be what they love. And so I would say the vast majority of architects that I know are actually happy and want to work with interior designers. So I would say try to have that more expansive, more inclusive, kind of abundant mentality when you look at that conversation.
That makes sense. Do we have time for one last question before you continue?
Let's go for it. Sure. Love it.
Hi, Enoch. I've heard you say in your video before, and I've taken that advice, but I wonder about the details in there. Anything in the video content we should be sure to include? Any tips on duration and any tips on targeting the social media market would be helpful too. Thanks for all that you do.
Okay, great. So there's two things I'd say here. Great question, right? We can get into the weeds a little bit about video. So when we're talking about video, we need to be aware of the platform that we're producing for, right? Be aware of the platform that you're producing for. And so one of my favorite, let's see here. I'll make this quick. So with YouTube, ultimately YouTube is a search engine. And with YouTube, it's going to be more advantageous to create really long-term evergreen content. Now, the production quality doesn't have to be through the roof, but ultimately you want it to be something that someone might type into a search engine, right? And so when we do this, we want to think about something, instead of having a title like, here's how my day went at my project today, right? For YouTube, it would be something like, again, here's 3 mistakes to avoid when hiring an interior designer. Boom. That would be a great video to record for YouTube. On the other hand, the more like LinkedIn video, Facebook video, Instagram video, the things that are more kind of constant and just continually refreshing, those can be much more little tidbits, little stories, more behind the scenes. Ultimately what I like to do, here's a good framework for you if you're going to create videos and this kind of content, is to come up with a story, tie it to a principle, and then have a takeaway or an action, right? So you're talking about a story, something that happened during your day, whether it's related to design or not. Come up with the principle about why that thing was important, and then the takeaway. I'll give you a quick example of how this works, right? You can listen to my podcast. I do this a lot with my Architect CEO update, but recently in my family right now, this week, I'm going to give you a quick little example here. My kids, they want to stay up all night or as late as they can on Friday. We have 6 kids. My oldest daughter is 14. My youngest daughter is 6 years old. And so we promised them that if they were able to do their chores all week long, that they would have that opportunity to be able to stay up as late as they wanted on Friday night, right? Quite the incentive. Well, ultimately what happened is, they forgot to set the table or whatever, and so they're dropping like flies. But on Tuesday, my oldest daughter kind of got mad at me because her younger sisters had messed up the room, and then we basically told the girls that share a room that they lost the privilege, right? And so what happened here is that we weren't clear as parents on the expectations that we were expecting our kids to abide by. And so it caused this gray area where my daughter's like, well, I spent time cleaning up the room. They got it messy. Why should I lose my privilege, right? And so what's the parable here for a design firm owner? Well, as a design firm owner, you need to make sure that the expectations are crystal clear for your staff and for your team members, that you have clear job roles, their responsibilities are defined. So if you'd like to find out more about this, go to businessofarchitecture.com and download my free guide on creating job roles for your firm, right? So that's what I mean, telling a story, tying it to a principle, and then ultimately having a call to action.
Great. Awesome.
That was probably a little bit more than you wanted, but there we go.
We'll let you keep going. And definitely just a reminder, if you do have questions, ask them and ask a question, and we'll get to the rest of the questions at the end of the next session.
I love it, right? So here's the key with turning that demand. So now you're creating demand, whether it's through videos on social media, podcasts, speaking, networking, meeting people like the mortgage brokers that you talked about, right? When you market correctly, it lessens the need to sell, right? And when we talk about sell, I talk about like trying to convince someone that, hey, we're a good deal, we should do this. I mean, I'm the right fit for you, right? So ultimately, you want to make sure you have the right mindset for persuasion. And then when we talk about this idea of business development, we want to have a systematic process. So we want to make sure we have consistent follow-up. We want to make sure that our in-person meetings are happening, phone calls, and we can leverage media like email, direct mail, text messaging, and social media. And what I mean by a systematic process is that you know that every week you're going to contact X number of people. Every week you're going to have lunch with X number of people. Okay, here's why this is so important. A lot of times designers, their time, if it's spent on business development, is worth about $700, $600 an hour. Whereas if they're sitting in their office just doing their work, a lot of times it's worth anywhere from $60 to $150 to $200 an hour, right? And so this is how we start to get more profit in our business. Of course, we want to get referrals. We talked about networking for that. And ultimately, we want to create a slippery slope, right? So you want to map out your sales process from first touch point to actually closing the deal. What are the different steps of what needs to happen? Now, something that I like to talk about here a lot is this idea of filling in the missing step in your sales process. A lot of times, architects, home design professionals, we want to, the only offer that we have up front is a large design contract. And so we kind of go through these couple meetings where we kind of figure out what the scope of the work is going to be. And then we give them a proposal. And a lot of times it's a lot of money and that scares them away, right? What I would have you consider is there a smaller bite-sized piece that you can charge your clients for, right? To get them engaged? Is there a smaller service, some sort of something that you would do before you actually launch into your full design services that you could actually offer them for a much smaller fee? And we call this the low commitment consultation, right? You can find out more about that at architectwebinar.com. Okay. So ultimately what that does is when you have a smaller piece that people can latch onto and get to know, like you, and trust you, you'll find that your conversion rate is going to increase because you've already made the initial sale. You're not asking to get married on the first date, right? So that's what we talk about, and that's what we look at when we talk about a system to turn demand into projects. We want to have a system to deliver and scale, right? Because ultimately, if it's just you doing everything, then you're going to bog down very quickly and the profit is going to suffer as a result. And so here is the roadmap for being able to set up your design firm to scale your business. Now, I have design firm owners that have come through my programs, and this is what we help them do, right? Anywhere from startups. I have a couple in my program right now, and this is the process we take them through, developing their mission, their vision, and their values. This is so important once you start to build a team. Being able to have an organizational chart. Now, this may seem like a bunch of big business foo-foo, but ultimately, this is the roadmap for the pieces that you're going to fill in later as you grow. What are the people that you need in your business right now to get things done so everything doesn't depend on you? So you can start acting more like a delegator and an executive and less like the frantic business owner who's rushing from left to right, making sure the invoices are done, making sure the designs get done, making sure that such and such was delivered, making sure that there's money in the bank to be able to pay for X, right? That's what we want to get out of. We go through this process called the delegation roadmap, which is being intentional about what you're doing and delegating everything that's not in your core area of genius. Process maps, right? This is the idea of getting everything that you need to happen in your business to function out of your head down in an organized state on a piece of paper, right? This can be a digital piece of paper, it can be a physical piece of paper, but actually getting it down, mapping out the relationships between them. So ultimately, when you bring on another team member or someone else to help you, they're following a proven roadmap instead of having to ask you about every single thing, right? Getting clear about the job roles and responsibilities, having a QA process for all of your work, and then, of course, once again, a way to orchestrate referrals. All right, so that is a system to deliver and scale, right? That's what we need. This is going to allow you to go from being the frantic business owner to being the chief executive and creative director of your business. Now, when we look at a system for improvement and accountability, we're talking about this idea of knowing your KPIs. What are the numbers that you need to have your finger on to understand your business? So in marketing and sales, we're going to look at things like your marketing spend and your ROI per channel. How much time are you spending on each of your marketing activities? And what is the results they're getting you in terms of leads, in terms of meetings, in terms of actual signed contracts or low commitment consultations? We want to look at, right, all these things add up together. And then we get, of course, the conversion rate to client. Right? What is our conversion rate from our meetings to actually people that move ahead with us? This allows us to figure out our average client value, which is so important because when we understand this number, this allows us to understand what we can afford to spend on our marketing. And the strategic key here is that the person who can spend the most to acquire a client is going to win the game. The person who can spend the most to acquire a client is going to win the game because they can afford to do the most marketing. Right? All right, so those are some marketing KPIs. When we look at firm efficiency, we have things, and I'm not going to go into these here, but you can look these up. Things like the net multiplier, the utilization rate, which would be how much of your time is actually spent on billable work. You want it to be high, but not too high. For a sole practitioner, you might want to be about 70%, maybe 60%, because you want to have 40% spent on business development. Your overhead rate, your profit margin, of course, this is a simple calculation. Income minus expenses divided by net operating revenue. And I would encourage you to develop some sort of metric for client happiness. Are you having some way to survey during the middle and at the end of a project to find out how satisfied people are with you, right? just send out that survey. Let them know, there's something called the Net Promoter Score that software companies use a lot. This is integral, and I believe that any successful company should definitely be measuring their client happiness. And so when we talk about your key KPIs, I mean, this is it, right? If you track these things here, this is going to get you to where you want to go, right? You'll be competing with any of the most sophisticated firms out there. Okay, when we talk about a culture of accountability, we mean that there are clear job roles. People know exactly what they're supposed to do. And let me give you an example why this is so important. I was talking with a very high-end architect. He's out on the East Coast in Connecticut, I think, running a fantastic firm, financially just knocking it out of the park. But he says that when he's gone, what ultimately happens is the phone will ring, and no one wants to answer the phone because they're busy working on their drawings. And so ultimately, the lowest person on the totem pole has to answer the phone. And it just so happens that this person is from a foreign country, has a bit of an accent, and is an introvert, and so speaks very, very softly. Can you imagine the negative client experience his high net worth clients are getting when they experience that, right? And so the reason why that's happening is because there's a lack of training and there's a lack of clear job roles in that company, right? A job role hasn't been established for who answers the phone when the office manager is not available and when the architect's out of the office, right? This is going to apply to you. And it's also ultimately essential, even if you're on your own, to have your own clear job role. What are the things that ultimately you are accountable for? Right? We don't want to micromanage. We want to hold people accountable for results. We want to have performance reviews with goals. Ultimately, these can happen quarterly. I encourage you to do quarterly sprints. And this could be something with yourself if you're working alone, or if you have team members, you're going to involve them as well. And so when we talk about meetings in a larger organization, if you have staff that work for you, generally you'd have a team meeting, you have a department meeting, and then you're going to have your executive meeting and then your owner meeting. These are the 4 key meetings that you want to have in a business. For a lot of you, you still want to have these meetings, but they're with yourself. Right. So when I was on my own, I was basically having a marketing meeting, and attending that meeting was Enoch, and Enoch. And we would look at our KPIs and we talk about our marketing activities. Is this getting us to where we want to go? If not, what do we need to change? So that's ultimately our last system here of our 4 pillars, which is a system for improvement and profitability. So if you're wondering what's next, I promise that you could get a downloadable PDF. I'll go ahead and create that. If you go to businessofArchitecture.com/profit-IV, you can download this whole thing expanded, and that'll work out for you. And now, Risa, I think I'm about up to my time limit. Back to you for any questions and to bring this home today.
Great. Super important information, and aligns a lot with the panels and the talks and the education that we produce here at Ivy. I loved at the end all of the pointers that you were touching on, and just making sure that whatever, if you're an architect, a builder, or a designer, that you are looking at your KPIs, and of course, just reiterating, because sometimes designers they get so caught up in the creative side that it's hard to focus on all of the moving parts of running a successful design architecture firm. So let me turn it over. We had some more housekeeping questions here about getting the website again to the PDF. Yes, we will make sure that you have all of that information. And what was the link again? Where can we find it? And I can drop that in.
Sure. Go to businessofarchitecture.com/profit-IV. So profit-IV. So it's businessofarchitecture, one word, .com /profit-IV.
Okay, perfect. I dropped that in there. We'll make sure to follow up with all of that information as well. Let me see. I see another question dropped right here. Let me get to this. And this is a great question. We get asked this all the time, so I'm glad that you're asking this question. I had heard something recently about not giving away initial consultations, charging for the first meeting where measurements are taken and a discussion takes place to understand the client's needs. What is your opinion?
Okay, to make sure I understood that, what someone is saying is they charge to go out there and take measurements and discuss the project scope. Is that correct?
Yeah, she's saying that, and this is an ongoing discussion. We have a private forum on our Ivy Facebook group, and I see this question all the time, whether you should charge for that initial consultation when you go out. Some people charge for it and then maybe credit it back. Some people charge for it and don't credit it back, and some people don't charge for that initial consultation. So what is your opinion?
Sure, I would charge for it and I would not credit it back.
Great.
And here's the reason why. I want to make a distinction between a get-to-know you meeting and an actual services meeting where you're actually using your expertise to do something. right? So if you're there giving them, they're picking your brain, you're actually traveling to some of the location, like you definitely need to be charging, because ultimately what happens is it's going to attract the clients who are willing to pay the higher fees, the people who respect your time and who are used to working with professionals, right? I know that from my perspective, when I have home service professionals come to my house and they're like, yeah, I'll come over for a free quote. You're always like, free quote, what's the catch?
Yeah. Yeah. And definitely, I could ask this question a lot. We talk a lot about being profitable. And one of the key things I always remember, and the example that I always like to give is when a plumber comes over to your house to plumb your toilet or there's an overflow, they don't question their hourly fee. They say, okay, it's going to be $500. You pay the $500. Sometimes in this luxury, design sector, designers start getting, it's a confidence level, right? And they start feeling not confident that they can't charge. Why would you not charge for your time? Exactly to your point. You're providing a service, you should get paid for it.
Bingo. Love it. Love it. You're right. It's mostly a mindset issue. Now, if it's part of a strategic framework, like if you have a proven sales process that includes a free initial meeting, go ahead and do that. I know firms that do that and it works for them. But if you're doing it just because you're scared to charge or you don't have some strategic framework behind it, or you think it's going to get you more clients, no.
Yeah. I totally agree.
And is this my buddy Sean Rose? Is Sean Rose, I think you said?
Yes, he's
Oh, my man.
Yes. Sean, I actually had a great comment earlier saying, I have a great collaborative relationship with an architect. It helps if you're able to bring project to the architect that you're not able to completely manage yourself, a double win. And I definitely really believe in the community over competition aspect. I think it's a great concern if an architect has interior design service, but you find the people and you build the team that will be super cohesive. So then when you come to your client, you're kind of a package deal, and that makes it easier and less overwhelming for your client to know that they have a really strong team working with them to produce their dream home or dream space. Let's see what else. Sean says hi.
Eleanor's on here too. Eleanor, great.
Yes. Yeah. There's a great audience today. A lot of energy and excitement around a topic that I know is really important, but sometimes people don't like to pay attention to the nitty gritty. And then a quick question here. How can we work with your firm individually?
Sure. So just reach out. You can email me. Just email support@businessofarchitecture.com. Say, hey, Enoch, I'd like to know more about your programs. How do you help businesses? Obviously, we'll have a phone conversation to see if there really is a fit.
Great. Awesome. Let's see. Any other questions? I think covered everything else when I stopped you. And then let's see over here. We covered the video content. I think we covered all the other questions. I'll give you all a couple of minutes just to ask any other questions before we wrap up. And for those of you that do want to stay on and learn a little bit more about Ivy, I know there was some specific question to that. I will make sure to answer your questions separately. Let's give you one more minute. Any other questions? And again, we'll be sure to email you a copy of this presentation. If you have questions for me, I will drop my email in, and we will drop in Enoch's email as well, so you have all of the contact information. Oh, here. There was one more link that started with Dream. What was that?
So Melissa, that was dreampracticewebinar.com. Dreampracticewebinar.com. One word. Go to that. There's a free training you'll be able to get access to. And one thing that going back to this idea of actually, there we go. Thank you for putting that in, Risa. When we were talking about delivering and scaling, one of the key tools that you're going to have are software services, right? So something like Ivy is going to be indispensable part of your business, being able to leverage that time. So being able to take that investment of investing in a software platform like Ivy, then is going to be able to free you up to be able to not only manage your business better. I mean, it's a no-brainer to be able to make that kind of investment. So
definitely. Make more time for design, as we like to say. Great. Well, thank you so much, Enoch. We really, really appreciate it. Super grateful for your time. I know you're a busy man, and thank you for sharing your knowledge with our audience today. We look forward to working with you and seeing you again, hopefully in the next coming year. And then if you have any questions, we'll make sure to get those answered post-webinar, and we'll follow up with an email with the presentation.
Great.
Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you soon.
Okay. Bye, y'all.
Great. So that was an awesome presentation, and something that we cover a lot on the Ivy side is, how to build your profitability roadmap. So I want to go into, and I know there's some questions about this, is what is Ivy? Ivy is a business management tool for home design professionals. And the idea is to really make more time so that you can focus on what you love to do and not be bogged down by the administrative tasks. I know I used to run a design firm back in the day, and I did some consulting after that, and I spend pretty much 99% of my time with designers, the time when I'm not sleeping, and understanding, what their pain points are. So let me go ahead and share my screen with you so that you all can get a little bit about what Ivy is and how it can really help you manage your time, make sure that you're making enough money, and tracking your time, not leaving any time on the table. So the first thing that I want to show you that's really awesome, and something that we covered a little bit in today's presentation, is just the simple tracking your time, charging for that initial consult. You can select the project that you're working on, select the service that you're providing, and then you can add in a description right here. There's a timer. There's also a mobile app. So you can do this on the go and make sure that you're at your max profitability. For designers, I've heard it's anywhere between 35 and 40% for your gross profit margin. Again, margin is very different than markup. That's a whole separate conversation. But the idea is that you are really paying attention to how you're billing, and really making sure that you're not accepting text messages from clients at 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. and that you're setting the groundwork and you're setting the expectations for your clients. You're in control. And even though this is a luxury service that you're offering, you are really ensuring that you are working to your best capability within the parameters that work for you, and you're setting those guidelines. So really quick and easy. I used to hear designers say all the time, billing, tracking time, it takes so much time. So with Ivy, you can easily go in, create your invoice, send it out to your client, very quick and easy. And then you can even send this out for online payment, so you can get paid directly through the system. It's branded, it has your logo, you can take credit card or bank transfer, super quick and easy. The money goes straight into your bank account and you're done. The other big pain point that I hear a lot from designers, and again, we talked about building that relationship between architects and designers and what architects do versus what designers do. And I heard Enoch say it, is the sourcing, the procurement. That's not really what architects, most of them, generally speaking, like to do. So that's where it's a great collaborative effort for you to team up with an architect where they can spec out, and then you, with your great vendor relationships, can negotiate really great pricing and be able to clip the items directly from the vendor's website with your Ivy Clipper. So it's an extension that nests on your browser, and you can actually just go in and clip the item right here, and it will directly populate right into your Ivy account. You can add the cost, you can add your markup. So you're just clipping the information directly from your supplier's vendor's website. And then you can add in your vendor. You can easily type that in right here. And then you can add it directly to a project that you're working on. You can add it to the room. And then you can add all of the SKU information, the finish, the color, the materials, and you can save it to your Ivy account, building out your product library. So that makes it really easy for you when you go into the project. Let's go into our Big Sky Lake project, and you're building out that proposal, or even you're building out that initial room board, however you want to start, whatever works for the way that you structured your business. And you can easily send that out to your client. It has the images, they know what they're purchasing. You can generate your own beautiful tear sheets. You can send it out again to your client for online payment. They can decline or accept the items. You can show them the markup percentage or not show them the markup percentage. Again, the system is really flexible into how you work and what information you want to show your clients. When your clients click on the invoice, they can see the items nice and big, and it's pretty easy. And then you can also generate your own specification sheets. So right here, I have some spec sheets that I've already pulled out, really nice and easy, has your logo, has your branding. Again, this will save you quite a bit of time because we know that takes a lot of time. You can go through the presentation in person with your clients if you want to, or you can and print it out, or you can go through the presentation on your iPad. Again, just really leveraging technology to help you save time, to make more money, to be able to focus on the design aspect of running your business, and also help you be able to understand how much money you're making before you're sending out this proposal in terms of markup, if that is your business model. And then it makes it super easy. You can just send your purchase order directly to your vendor through the system. Vendors love it because they're getting really organized POs from you, so there isn't any discrepancy on the procurement side. Again, makes it really easy. You can add attachments to your vendor, and then you can also plug in the estimated ship date. Again, this is all part of the process that is very cumbersome and takes a lot of time and a lot of project management, but you can see and assign tasks and items to different team members. And then Ivy generates what I call the Bible of your project tracker. This is kind of what I used to manually create in Excel. So Ivy gives you a really good view of all of the items, products. You can really drill down to what you want to see that have been approved, and it will tell you the status of these items and the scheduling issues. And then you can add in 5 of your own custom columns like tracking number, CFA number. And then of course you can export out an FF&E schedule, or if you want to further drill down, you can always download it to Excel. This is a great tool to use with your receiving warehouse because then they are organized and they know what's coming in for each of your projects. As I mentioned before, building out your product library is super awesome and saves you time. If you use the same paint color, you don't have to just use the product clipper for furniture. It can be for tile, plumbing, literally anything that you're specifying, you can clip. Even if you aren't doing the direct purchasing, you can still clip the item. You can save paint colors, for example, and create a paint schedule in the system. The same color, Benjamin Moore Chantilly lace, if you use that all over and over again, you can just clip it. It lives in your library. You can reuse that as many times as you want. And then a couple quick little things that I wanted to cover with you. Reports, knowing your numbers, understanding where you're at. You can pull reports through Ivy, through a transaction report, project payment, purchase orders, time billing, your sales tax liability. And then we also do sync with QuickBooks on the back end. Really important to note that Ivy is a project management tool on the front end for you as a designer to be in. And then on the back end, if you have a bookkeeper, Enoch talked a lot about outsourcing, which is something I talk a lot about too. Really outsourcing the things that are bogging you down and aren't making you money. And that you can actually outsource and even bill out for and kind of offset those costs. Definitely every bookkeeper, accountant, CPA, CFO level, anything should know how to use QuickBooks. It's one of the most commonly used accounting softwares. So we do sync with QuickBooks Online on the back end, and we do have a special partnership built out with them so that you will receive lifetime discounted pricing. So that's all. I'm going to pop back in and see if anybody else has any other questions regarding Ivy. And then, of course, I'm happy to jump on a one-on-one call with you and understand a little bit more about your business. We like to give all sorts of presentations and education and really help you build out the elements of your business and support you the best that we can. There's a whole webinar series we like to bring on and really find the top of the top business coaches, bookkeepers, really experts in the design field to help you take your business to that next level. And I think I answered your question above. Does Ivy work with QuickBooks Online? Yes, and I do actually recommend the QuickBooks Online, the Plus version, because that allows your POs to sync over as well. And thank you so much for all of the great feedback. Enoch's presentation It was amazing and definitely very informative. I will go ahead and make sure that you guys have all of the information that we mentioned, because I know you were asking about a file and a link. We will make sure that you have all of that information, and then I will make sure that you have my email address so that you can email me if there's anything I possibly missed. And thank you again for joining us today. Wherever you are, I hope you're enjoying the weather as much as I am. It's very hot where I am right now. I'm in the Bay Area, and hope to see you at any of the upcoming markets. We'll be at High Point Market next fall, so feel free, next month. So feel free to send me an email so that you can understand what type of activities we'll be up to there, and would love to meet you in person as well. Thank you so much. Everybody have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.